Hey YouTube, Scarpad here from Scarpad's Comic Treks, and today we're looking at a brand new Blu Ray release from Kino Lorber and Studio Canal of the classic 1961 film called The Day the Earth Caught Fire. Now, The Day the Earth Caught Fire was produced, written, and directed by Val Guest. Val Guest is a classic director who directed such films as Quartermass 2, The Quartermass Experiment, known in America as The Creeping Unknown. And he also did The Abominable Snowman with Peter Cushing, as well as very films in this country, like The Black Cat and some of the other Universal films. He did the golden films back in the 40s and 50s. And this is a great science fiction precursor to films like The Day After Tomorrow, except this is kind of looking at it from the angle of the newspaper business. This is what I almost would say, this is kind of like a science fiction version of the old 70s show Lou Grant, because it really dives into the workings, the inner workings of the newspaper business. And it stars Edward Judd in his first movie. Edward Judd was also in the classic First Man in the Moon, where he was great. This is his first starring role. And Janet Monroe, who up to this point was doing movies for Disney, things like Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And she wanted to break out of that mold, and boy does she. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous actress and has several almost tame by today's standards, but back for 1961, pretty provocative semi-nude scenes, and some of them were even cut for the American broadcast of this film. And The Day the Earth Caught Fire talks about a little bit like that 50s paranoia with the nuclear bombs, with the arm race, where everybody had a nuke and was setting it off. And at the beginning of this movie, Russia, America, and other foreign powers are upping the game with the nuclear arsenal and detonating all these test bombs, and it causes the Earth to go off its axis and literally kind of shift orbits. And because of this, we get wild cyclones and earthquakes and mudslides and every other type of calamity. And ultimately, what it does is it's bringing the Earth's orbit closer to the sun. So temperature changes, extreme changes, water dries up, lakes, riverbeds dries up. There's panic, there's lack of water, there's rioting, looting in the streets, much like today. But this film has all that, but it's a very serious, very serious treatment of this. It reminds me a little bit of that Twilight Zone episode, The Midnight Sun, where you get, I think it's Lois Nettleton was in it, and you find the Earth's moving close to the sun and everything that's happening because of that. This is kind of like that, but on an expanded level. Actually, that probably would have came before this movie, But, Edward Judd, Jim, and Monroe, excellent in it. I mean, we get this backdrop of a love story. He's the broken down reporter going through a divorce. He has become an alcoholic. This is his big redeeming time where he can redeem himself with a big story. She's the operator that's in the office that all this information's coming through, and the hush in London to keep this all quiet so there's not a panic, and they break the story. Also in this is Leo McKern. Leo McKern also played a lot in British shows. He was Rumpole the Bailey. He had the part of Gwent in Space 1999, if anybody remembers that, the infernal machine on the moon. And he's excellent here. I mean, the dialogue in this film, I would rank this right up there with things like The Thing from Another World, where the dialogue is so crisp and deep, and there's all these side conversations going on. Dialogue in this film is excellent. It only runs 99 minutes. It's a quick film. It starts off in a sepia tone, almost like what The Wizard of Oz did, to denote the high heat. They used a yellow gel on the film, and then it switches over to black and white. And this is a stunning transfer. 16:9 original aspect ratio, excellent, excellent transfer of the movie, and then it bookends with the sepia tone at the end. This was a fantastic film. I enjoyed every minute of it. Where things like The Day After Tomorrow is just goofy fun, this is a very, serious treatment of this type of story. Back then everybody was worried about, much like today, blowing ourselves up or what would happen with the atomic bombs, and this really captures all that. It's a fantastic movie. This has a few features on it. There's some trailers, some radio and TV spots, and I think there's a recycled commentary here with Val Guest that's several years old. I think it was on an Anchor Bay DVD release of this film, but I think this is the first time it ever showed up on Blu Ray. And I listened to a little bit of the commentary. The commentary is pretty fascinating to listen to. The director, especially this big-time director who has directed a lot of science fiction and genre horror movies. Get to listen to him about how he brought this story to the big screen. He had to leverage several of his other films to get this thing filmed. Because, back in the day, sci-fi was kind of kiddie. So when you had a serious science fiction movie that talked seriously and didn't have, monsters in it and so forth, they didn't want to really film this type of stuff. But I'm glad it got made. The Day the Earth Caught Fire is brand new from Kino Lorber. You can find this well under $20. If you're a fan of science fiction from the 50s and 60s, if you're a fan of just classic movies, this deserves to be in your collection. At least give it a watch, a look through. I really highly recommend it. It was one of my favorite films in the post-apocalyptic genre that came out back in the 50s and 60s. So I hope you enjoyed this review. First look at The Day the Earth Caught Fire from Kino Lorber. Look for it in your favorite video store. This has been Scarpad Comic Treks. And once again, keep reading, keep trekking, and we'll catch you later.